Greetings, bibliophiles, and welcome back to the Well-Read Monocle. Today, we are stepping into the grit and rain-slicked streets of the American Pacific Northwest in the mid-1970s. We are discussing Coffin Moon by Keith Rosson, a novel that seamlessly blends the grimy texture of a crime thriller with the visceral dread of supernatural horror. This is a story about grief, the devastating cost of vengeance, and the lengths to which we go for family. It is a tale of hunters and the hunted, played out across snow-covered plains and neon-lit dive bars. In this video, I shall guide you through the complete narrative of the book, dissecting the plot, the characters, and the tragic conclusion. Do be warned, we are discussing the book in its entirety, so spoilers are, quite naturally, inevitable. Part 1. The Last Call. Our story begins in December 1975 in Portland, Oregon. We are introduced to Duane Miner, a Vietnam veteran who works as a bartender at The Last Call, a tavern owned by his in-laws, Ed and Joanne Shaw. Duane lives in the apartment above the bar with his wife, Heidi, and their 13-year-old niece, Julia. Duane is a man trying to keep his head down. He is 18 months sober, haunted by nightmares of the war, and trying to be a stable guardian for Julia. Julia is a troubled girl. Her mother, Heidi's sister, is serving a life sentence in New York for murdering her abusive husband, Ray, a crime Julia witnessed. Consequently, Julia carries a deep-seated rage that frequently manifests in schoolyard fights. The inciting incident occurs when a motorcycle gang known as the Crooked Wheel begins frequenting the bar. Duane discovers that his mother-in-law, Joanne, is being coerced into letting them deal heroin out of the back room. Joanne is desperate. Her husband, Ed, has terminal cancer, and the gang's leader has promised a cure. Duane, refusing to let the family business be compromised, violently ejects the dealers. He confronts their leader, a massive blonde man named John Varley. Varley is enigmatic, terrifying, and curiously unbothered by having a gun pointed in his face. Duane forces Joanne to take a Polaroid photo of Varley to use as leverage with the police. However, Varley is not a man to be trifled with. He is not, in fact, a man at all. Days later, Duane returns home to a scene of absolute carnage. John Varley has retaliated. He has brutally murdered and dismembered Heidi in their apartment, as well as Ed and Joanne in their nearby home. Julia survives only because she was at a sleepover. When the police investigate, led by Detective Scoggins, Duane produces the Polaroid of Varley. But the image is impossible. Where Varley's face should be, there is only a blur of smoke. Scoggins reveals that a man matching Varley's description committed a string of identical, limb-tearing murders in Portland back in 1931. Duane realizes he is not dealing with a biker, but with a monster. Part 2. The Children's Museum. Duane and Julia go on the run, moving into a motel. Duane falls back into alcoholism to cope with his grief, whilst Julia becomes obsessed with revenge. She begins hunting for information on Varley in the city's underbelly. Julia is directed to a local park to meet a figure named Adeline. Adeline appears to be a young girl in a dirty dress, but she is an ancient, vampire-like creature. She lives in a boarded-up complex of houses known as the Children's Museum, filled with starving, feral vampire children she has turned but cannot bring herself to kill. Julia petitions Adeline for help to kill Varley. Adeline explains that Varley is a maker, a powerful entity, and that a human stands no chance against him. Julia makes a harrowing choice. To gain the strength to avenge her family, she allows Adeline to turn her. She becomes a creature of the night, bound by a promise to return to Adeline and join the museum once Varley is dead. Duane is horrified when he discovers Julia has been turned. She now burns in the sunlight and requires human blood to survive, but he refuses to abandon her. He becomes her guardian in a much darker sense, procuring blood for her and driving her west as they track Varley's trail of bodies. Part 3. The Long Hunt. We shift perspectives to follow the antagonist, John Varley. We learn that Varley has been alive for nearly a century. He is violent and narcissistic, yet he has found a genuine, albeit twisted love with a human man named Johan. Johan is Varley's thrall, a young, flamboyant European artist who delights in Varley's violence. Varley and Johann are running a drug empire in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, saving money to move to Alaska, where the long nights will allow Varley to live without fear of the sun. However, Varley senses Duane and Julia pursuing him. He performs a blood calling, a magical summons that compels other vampires in the region to hunt Duane down. Duane and Julia face constant attacks from these summoned creatures. They learn that silver is the only substance that truly wounds their kind. Duane manages to purchase a handful of handmade silver bullets from a gunsmith in Fargo. The narrative courses through the American Midwest. Varley's drug operation collapses when he is ambushed by police. In the chaos, Varley is shot with standard lead, which he heals from instantly, but the blood calling has weakened him. He and Johann flee into the countryside. Part 4. Blood on the Ground. The paths finally converge at a dilapidated farmhouse. Duane and Julia ambush Varley and Johann. In a moment of grim finality, Duane shoots Johann in the back, killing him instantly. Varley is devastated by the loss of the only being he ever loved. Enraged, Varley attacks Duane. He shatters Duane's ribs and breaks his spine, leaving him dying in the dirt. Julia intervenes, fighting Varley, but they are outmatched. Julia manages to drag Duane's broken body into their van and escapes. However, Duane is dying. He begs Julia to let him go, to let him be at peace with his wife, Heidi. But Julia cannot bear to be alone. In a tragic act of preservation, she feeds Duane her blood, turning him. Duane wakes up in the trunk of the car, healed but irrevocably changed. He is now a vampire. He is furious with Julia for denying him death, but they are now bound together by their nature and their singular goal: killing John Varley. Part 5. The Maker. Varley, wounded by silver during a skirmish with a state trooper and heartbroken over Johann, seeks to regain his strength. He travels to a service station where he performs a ritual to summon his own Maker, the ancient creature who turned him in the early 1900s. The Maker appears as a charred, skeletal figure. He mocks Varley's attachment to a human. Varley, realizing his Maker is weak from sun exposure, attacks him. He kills his own creator and drinks his ancient blood. This act purges the silver from Varley's system and grants him new, terrifying abilities, including the power to track Julia and Duane telepathically. Varley calls Detective Scoggins in Portland, using his new powers to mesmerize the detective over the phone, learning that Duane and Julia are likely heading back to where it all began. Portland. Part 6. Such grim finality. The climax takes place in Portland. Duane and Julia return to the city, haunting their old lives. Duane visits the cemetery where Heidi and her parents are buried. There, he is cornered by Detective Scoggins, who attempts to arrest him. Suddenly, Varley appears. He brutally kills Scoggins and attacks Duane, throwing him through gravestones. Varley is stronger than ever, his hands now capable of turning into obsidian claws. Just as Varley prepares to deliver the killing blow, Julia steps from the shadows. She is holding a revolver loaded with the last silver bullet, but because she is a vampire, holding the silver burns the flesh from her hand, turning it to a charred claw. She shoots Varley. The silver shatters his jaw and arm, poisoning him instantly. Varley flees, wounded and rotting, into an abandoned warehouse. Duane follows him. They have a final conversation in the dark. Varley, dying and stripped of his arrogance, admits that he understands their vengeance because of his own love for Johann. Julia arrives. She does not hesitate. She places the gun against Varley's head and pulls the trigger, ending his century-long existence. With the vendetta finished, the reality of their existence sets in. Julia's hand is ruined from the silver. She tells Duane she must honor her debt. She leaves him to return to Adeline and the Children's Museum to live out her eternity in the dark. Duane is left entirely alone. He cannot return to his old life, and he cannot die. He breaks into the now closed bar, the last call, the place where his life fell apart. The book ends with a poignant, quiet scene. Duane sits in the dark, drinking a beer he can no longer taste, and finally opens the manuscript of the novel his wife Heidi had been writing, a book he never read while she was alive. He begins to read, seeking a connection to the humanity he has lost, condemned to an endless night. Coffin Moon is a tragedy wrapped in the guise of a monster movie. It suggests that while we may kill our demons, the scars they leave and the monsters we become to defeat them remain forever. Thank you for watching the Well-Read Monocle. If you enjoyed this summary, do ensure you subscribe for more literary explorations. Until next time.